I'm Becky James, Engagement Manager for GreenAcres. We see firsthand how difficult grief is for people. I am delighted to be joined by Debbie Binnner and Erika Uffindell, who are working with us on a programme of new workshops, which are part of our mission to encourage more people to think about how we can all live well when we've lost loved ones. Debbie is a well-being writer and author of best-selling Amazon book, Yet Here I Am, One Woman's Story of Life After Loss. She's training to be a psychotherapist. Erika is a systemic coach who works with a range of issues, including loss. Welcome to both of you. Debbie, can first of all, I ask you what you've learned about loss from your personal experience?
Yes, I can. But first of all, thank you, Becky, so much for having us on this. And thank you so much for offering your beautiful parks to us as well, because having a lovely kind of soulful location like this has been so great for us. So I have had a lot of loss in my life, a lot of loss out of the normal kind of trajectory of loss. I really sadly lost a daughter and a husband. And I also lost my mother when I was very young. So loss has been a very intrinsic part of my life, really. And at a time when other people were not experiencing loss. So I think it had an added kind of isolating factor. So I have found that I have needed a huge amount of support to try and live again after loss, particularly after losing my daughter and my husband. Both of these losses put you in a really difficult position and can make everyday life really difficult. You know, being a widow, for example, there's so much to say about this, but being a widow, for example, you'll suddenly find yourself in a very, very different position, difficult and different from other people. The people you used to mix with before, you're no longer that couple that kind of forms a part of a group. So there's so many different challenges. And I lost my daughter 10 years ago and my husband 8 years ago. But I find even now that there are lots of things I'm trying to deal with in everyday life. And trying to find a path through that has been really difficult, actually. And so that's one reason that Erika and I have got together to try and craft a workshop, a space for people where they can think about these issues and try and kind of flow with life more.
And you have spoken to me about bringing joy back in, which I guess is a word, the joy word doesn't seem like something that will be easy to find after those kind of losses.
You know what? It definitely isn't, but it is. I think it is an innate human thing that we have in us, that we want to live well, whatever's happened to us. And my turning point for joy was understanding that I wanted to honor the people I've lost by living well, and by giving myself that permission to do that has enabled joy. And obviously it's not joyful all the time, but it has enabled me to find a joyful way of living, and a way of living with the people that I've lost and love so much. So I think it's a really I think it's definitely possible. And it's such a precious, wonderful world that we all deserve to live with joy, whatever's happened to us.
I hear that conversation often in our Good Grief cafes about feeling guilty about living life. So I am really interested in how to help people find joy, because that's definitely a theme that we have in our bereavement support cafes in the parks. And people do feel guilty about enjoying their life again and without the people that they loved.
I think some people feel guilty anyway, don't we, in life? Often we're not very good at living well, actually. We often think we shouldn't live well, and particularly when you've been through, traumatic times, it can cloud that belief in that we are worth, living well again. So I think that's really important.
So Erika, tell us a little bit about how you use your coaching experience to guide the participants through these workshops that we've planned.
Yeah, so I think this one will be a different type of workshop, because we're going to mix what we call cognitive. So, kind of what's in our head, what's in our stories, what are the patterns, that we maybe have got stuck in, maybe a story of loss that, Debbie was saying it's 10 years on, but there's still times where you have to kind of go back into that place, of course, and you live with it every day as well. So we want to try to begin to think about what are the patterns, what are the stories around the loss that we tell ourselves, and importantly, how can we move forward? So joy is a real part of that, living well. But what do we see our life in the next, 6 months? It might even be how do we see life tomorrow? How do I get up tomorrow and feel better about my life and about the future? How do I feel about next week? How do I feel about next month? How do I feel about next year and the 5 years and 10 years? So part of it is definitely looking at the now. Where are you now in your life? How are you feeling? What awareness do you have of the patterns and stories that you have, and what's holding you back perhaps of stepping forward? And then we're going to do some work around actually stepping forward and beginning to sort of almost map what a future might look like. And very importantly, the resources that we each have. Because sometimes we don't always aware of the actual resources that we have. Sometimes we say, well, family and friends, but we actually have a lot of other resources, community, network. Sometimes it's as simple as reading and looking at a podcast, reading a book. It might be getting some coaching or therapy. There are many other resources that we have. So the resources are really important. And we'll be doing what we call cognitive, so the mind, what does the mind tell us? And also what we call embodied work, which is the body. And the body has a lot of messages to give us. And the body is a really big part of our healing. So it'll be different in the sense that we'll be doing some thinking work, and we'll be doing some work. Beautiful setting that you've got there. So hopefully the weather will be great. If it isn't anyway, we have ways to manage that, but we will be all getting up and doing some work together so that we can begin to feel that flow that Debbie was talking about within our body as well, because research says that the body remembers. So if we can actually begin to feel things in our body, not just in our head, we have an awful lot more likelihood of being able to move forward in a sustained manner. We'll always fall back. As we all know, we move forward in life, and then sometimes we think, we get back into a pattern and we think, I'm here again. And that's natural. But what we hope is that will help to give you a little bit more of a sustained momentum going forward once we do some of the embodied work.
So how does somebody know if this is the right moment in time for them to do this workshop? I know that's a really difficult question for you to answer, but is there somebody, if somebody's listening to this, how will they know that this is the right thing for them to do?
So I'll answer first of all. I think it is a great question, actually. And I think only you can know that. And there are times, I certainly find, one day I'm ready to start planning for the next year. And some days I just want to sit and, just be aware and sad and just taking that time. So I think it is really trying to think yourself about where you are. And that doesn't mean to say you're not going to be upset or that things are going to be difficult. But are you just having that little bit of curiosity to think, actually, I wonder what my life could be now. I wonder if I could, maybe do, I'm taking the widow example, okay, I'm aware I don't fit in that same world anymore. So I want to maybe start being a little bit curious about another way I could fit, and, in a different way, and finding that they're kind of little bits of hope for the future. And I think when you've started to think a little bit like that, then this might be the time for you to spend that time on yourself, to really kind of, and that guilt piece is so important, but to really be compassionate with yourself. You've been through, when you've lost somebody, you've been through such a dreadful emotional trauma. They say it can be like the equivalent of a car crash, serious car crash for the mind. So just taking that time gently to think, am I, what I deserve to live a joyful life? We all do, everybody does. And how might that look? Just starting to think about that. And then I think this could be a good space for you.
Okay, and then maybe this question to Erika: what can people expect during the day? Because I imagine they'll be listening to this, maybe feeling a little bit fearful. And what are they letting themselves in for? Could you maybe give us insights into what the day will look like?
I was just going to add to what Debbie said. I think it was a very good point Debbie made about kind of curiosity, even if there's a little spark of curiosity about, oh, maybe I'll go and just see how I get on. And also if there's a sense of something new calling you, because in a deeper sense of us, we often know that we really do want to reach out or step forward, and it's an intuitive piece. So I think that piece about is there something somewhere that you wake up in the morning sometimes when you're having a cup of tea or going for a walk and you think, I'd really like to move forward and do something new in my life or different in my life or take a step forward in my life. So in terms of what people will experience linked to that, the morning is going to be very much and a lot of our work is going to be sharing and group work and working in pairs, because we find that actually creating a safe space in this, having these sorts of conversations is really, really important. And to be able to share in pairs and share back into the group is going to be a really important part of it. So a little bit of it is going to be information based, some of the things that Debbie and I have learned through our life, particularly Debbie in her process of loss and grief. There'll be some work at the beginning in terms of where are you now, and there'll be some almost kind of imaging and processing around that piece. And then in the afternoon, so the kind of morning is where are you now, and in the afternoon we're going to be looking at how we step forward. So we're going to ask people to imagine a future, what that might look like. We're going to do some exercises. We're going to give people some tools around how to do that. Almost kind of set up what is my heart's desire, might be even what's my heart's desire for tomorrow. But what does that look like? What's my, I don't want to use the word purpose, because purpose is quite a big piece. And it's not, at this point, we're not creating a sense of purpose for people. What we do want is just a stepping forward. And what does that feel like? And then we'll be working in pairs to think about, okay, what are the resources I have? How do I use those resources? And a little bit of an action plan, because what we want is to people to go away and say, okay, I've got 2 or 3 things that I'm going to do differently tomorrow. Not that they just turn up and listen to Debbie and I speaking. The most important thing about this workshop, this working session, whatever you want to call it, is it's totally interactive. And now people say it's not so much about telling stories as sharing stories. I think that's also very important, that we'll get to share. And Debbie talked about isolation at the beginning and COVID. And I think this is a very timely piece here, because I'm a single mother. COVID has been very isolating for people. And I think that it's a very timely piece here, and to remember that we're not alone. And so I think this piece of work right now for us to come together and do this for people is that we can share our experiences, we can share our learnings, and we can share the things that have worked for us. Doesn't mean they're going to work for everyone. I don't know about you, but when I hear someone say on a podcast what's worked for them, I think, oh, wow, maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll give that a go. So I think that's the real premise of the day. And I don't know, Debbie, if there's anything else for you to add there.
No, it's beautifully put, Erika. And just to reiterate, when I had my losses, it wasn't in a time that we've had this pandemic. And I just can't imagine how difficult it is for people who are trying to process some of this stuff and dealing with that extra level of isolation. And there's such a massive need. I mean, there's more and more research coming out to say how difficult this period has been for people, particularly when they've lost somebody. So you're taking some time to kind of really heal and really heal ourselves in a compassionate way, I think is such an important thing to do.
I think we're really excited from the perspective from GreenAcres about creating a community of people that can support each other. And our Good Grief cafes have been the starting point of that over the last 12 months or so. And we hear that so many times about the isolation that people have felt and the fear about coming back out into the world again. And that's been a really common theme. So for all of us to be working together to create a supportive community of people who are grieving, and hopefully we're going to hear some really positive stories of how people have managed to bring some joy back into their lives again.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it, Becky. So thank you so much for inviting us.
So is there anything else either of you would say to somebody listening to this to persuade them to take that step?
I think I'd just say take a really big deep breath and log on and sign up, because you know, sometimes that first step of doing it. And what I would say is everyone can go at their own pace on the day. And that's very important, I think, is that there is no right or wrong on this day. You know, you can sit out of things if you don't want to do them. You know, you can just go and sit on your own for a little while and contemplate. So, you know, it really will be each of your days. And I think that's very important. So, you know, of course, there's always this trepidation and anxiety when you're signing up for something. But I think it's very important for us to say that we will, as much as we can, hold a space for each and every one of the people on the day, for their own individual journey and for where they are now and for where they want to get to.
And I think I'd like to add as well that we heal, as you know, our ancestors showed us that we heal as a community, and that it's not normal for people to be sitting alone at home just trying to deal with a lot of difficult stuff. So by coming out, by having that courage just to make that first step, to come out into the kind of fantastic communities that you run, Becky, but people first of all knowing that those things are there, and then coming and almost people kind of witnessing and helping you on your journey as well is such a powerful thing. And we hope, and we're absolutely sure, that this workshop will really start to provide that kind of support.
So our first workshop takes place on Saturday, the 8th of October. So not very far away now. And booking for that can be found on Eventbrite. There'll be details at the end of this video of where you can go to book. But in the meantime, I'd just like to say an enormous thank you to both of you for your time today. And we will look forward to seeing, hopefully, many people joining us in our work to support people who are grieving in our community.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing everyone.